Well, again, good morning and welcome to Meeting House Church. Whether you are here in person or you are joining us online, we're so glad to be together today. Just a couple of grounding sort of invitations as we get started this morning. Throughout January and February, we are doing a series looking at some of the prophets in the Bible. And the prophet is one who calls to the people, inviting and reminding them of when they've lost their way. And each Sunday, we're picking up a different one of what are known often as the minor prophets. There are 12 of them, as there were 12 tribes in Israel, which I learned a week ago and figured, not the 12 tribes part, the 12 books that's finally connected. Anyway, I went to seminary and have a PhD. So today we're going to be tackling the book of Hosea around the theme of returning. And to some of the opening questions that Leah shared with us this morning, I'm imagining that we all have different points in our life when we've gotten lost, when we've chosen to get lost, when we've chosen to go another way, or where we found ourselves in a place that actually wasn't particularly life-giving. And today we're going to sit with that theme and the invitations, some that you've already experienced in your life and some that may be. Speaking of returning, though, and turning, if you've been paying attention at all to the news in our country this week and in the world, there's so many different places where it's evident that we need to turn and we need to return. So I just wanted to pause and share, invite us into prayer together through a prayer that actually Shelby had posted some words from Erica Jones on Instagram as she was just reflecting on the murder of Tyre Nichols. And I think whether it's that, Palestinians being killed, the war in Ukraine, violence in families, we need to turn. And so I invite you to pray with me. God, who is the God of love, of life, and of all of us, you know that we lose our way. You know that we lose sight of that not only are we loved, but that this entire world and every created being is loved. God, may your Spirit help us, not just as individuals, but as a people, to turn to one another, to turn toward love, to turn toward grief and pain, that your healing and your life and your peace might be ours. Praying with the words of Erica Jones. God, we affirm that Black men deserve to be fully seen and heard, to live long, healthy, prosperous lives with unwavering confidence that they can return home safely to their loved ones. So God, might you open each of us to see and understand and to act in love. This is not the world we want to live in. With every ounce of our being, we know it is not. Whatever whether it is anti-Black or Asian, anti-Semitism, anti-any humanity, we are desperately in need for a miracle through love. So may we not move to our intellect, but might we move into our hearts and our bodies as we pray for and work for your love, your joy, your peace. For it's in Christ's name that we gather. Amen. Amen. I just want to note a couple other things for you. One is that every week in our worship guide on the back, there's some prayers that you can be praying for others in our community. I do want to add Jane and Rob Davidson to the prayers for today. And then also want to note, today you might know it's the first time we have flowers in the alternative service. Often in our traditional service, by often I mean every single week, we have flowers. either as a way of remembering a loved one or as a way of naming a place of care or love that we want to symbolize in our broader world. And so today, these are given in memory of William Gold, who is the husband of church member Pam. He is missed and he is loved by his family. So with that, I want to invite you, I'm going to invite Kelly Bergman up to read a part of our passage for today around our theme of returning. And then we're going to sing a good one. Come on up, Kelly.
This is from the book of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 1 through 6. Come, let us return to Yahweh, the one who has torn us asunder will make us whole. The one who struck us down will bind our wounds. In 2 days God will bring us back to life, and on the third day God will restore us, so we will live in the presence of the Most High. Let us come to know Yahweh intimately, and pursue that knowledge zealously. And as sure as the sun rises in the morning, God will come and will return to us like the rains of winter, like the rains of spring that water the earth. O Ephraim, what am I going to do with you? In Judah, what am I going to do with you? Your devotion is like the morning fog, like the dew of the morning light that vanishes. So I hack them to pieces through my prophets and slay them with the words of my mouth. My judgments flash like lightning before you, for I desire kindness towards others, not sacrifice, acknowledgement of God, not burnt offerings.
Well, I'm going to invite you, if you're game, to stand up, because if you don't know this song from Johnny Lang, it might get you to actually be turning around as you're singing it. So let's sing the first song together.
You might be in trouble, you might be running, but it's never too late to turn around. 'Cause as long as you're still breathing, there'll always be another time to make the right decision before you die, because the choices you make might be mistakes, but it's never too late to turn around on the road that you take might lead you astray, but don't be afraid to turn around, oh, the choices you make might be mistakes, but it's never too late to turn around on the road that you take might lead you astray, but don't be afraid to turn around, turn around.
Woohoo. You may be seated. George is coming up because it's time for God's Garden.
It is. Thank you. I want to rip and solo on the God's Garden song next time too. Woo! Yeah, Eliza's ready to go. Eliza wants a rip and solo too. Good morning, everybody. Right now, it's God's Garden time, and what that is a time for all of our friends, birth through fifth grade, if they would like to come with us and to be in community and to learn about Jesus and God and sing songs and tell stories and make art and hang out and be together. But before we go to God's Garden, we have to sing our God's Garden song, which the band is going to sing for us twice through. If you know it, sing it both times. I know our friends up here will sing it both times. Band, are you ready? Ready. All right, let's sing it.
Come to the garden, gather round, come without fear. Know my name here in God's garden. All are welcome here.
All together now.
Come to the garden, gather round, come without fear. Know my name here in God's garden. All are welcome here.
Yeah, give them a round of applause. Good job, everybody. And now, my friends up here, you know the drill. On the count of three, we have to say as loud as we can, "Hi, church!" On the count of three, are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, that was pretty good. That was good. That was good. Now, church, it's a little cold outside. You know, I get it. I get it. Church, on the count of three, can you say as loud as you can, "Have fun, kids"? 1, 2, 3. Yes, amazing. Now, friends, we are going to begin our God's Garden. All of our pre-K friends will go with Miss Ainsley through that door right there. And nursery friends, too, if you're still here. And then all of our kindergarten friends are already running out that back door with me. All right, have a good day.
Good morning. My name is Leah. I am on the Emerging Generations staff here. Let's give it up one more time for this band, okay? That was incredible. You guys sound great. I am excited to be here with you today. As I was thinking about the book of Hosea and talking with Sarah about it, I thought about a book that I had read a while back, but it's called The Blue Parakeet. And it's by Scott McKnight, and it's about rethinking how you read the Bible. And it's called The Blue Parakeet because the concept is picture yourself looking outside, bird watching, right here in the Minnesota Midwest winter. Maybe you see a blue jay, some cardinals, and then all of a sudden there's, on your bird feeder, a blue parakeet. And it's like, what the heck? And so it's the concept in the Bible where there's actually these blue parakeets, where we come across some things that don't quite make sense, or it's hard to make sense of. And that's sometimes a hard thing to press into or wrestle with, because if you were raised like me at all, maybe you've heard that the Bible is the absolute truth, right? And so sometimes wrestling with the absolute truth is really uncomfortable, or what we think is true. But when we observe and take a step back and wonder and press into the curiosity of the blue parakeet, we start to think, why is it here? Is it relevant? Does it have nowhere else to go? Does it need something? It starts to lead us to all of these questions that help us explore ourselves, our surroundings, and each other, and community. And I think Jesus was really good at providing some blue parakeets, doing a lot of things that didn't make sense culturally. And today we are still in the world of structures and systems that we've built to try to make sense. And a lot of times people don't fit, or they're left out because those systems are not favorable or good, right? So what do we do about it? How can we observe that? And I think if it's not good news for all people, is it really good news? So that's a wrestling with what we might think has always been true. Maybe it's time for us to press towards curiosity, wonder about the blue parakeets, and what do we do with it? And be able to kind of look the fear of wrestling, right, in the face, and know that growth and discovery will happen, and that we will grow deeper eyes and roots to see each other and develop into a more wholesome, returning type of garden for all people. So I want you to think a little bit on that today. Is there a time that you have wrestled with the truth? And what was that like for you? And did wrestling with the truth help you see or understand others in a new way? So take just a few minutes at your tables. If you're sitting alone, move to with each few other people and just discuss these questions with each other. All right, this is your 1 minute warning, so you can wrap up any stories or thoughts.
Summer's end around the bend, just flying. Swimming suits are on the line, just drying. I'll meet you there per our conversation. I hope I didn't ruin your whole vacation. Well, you never know how far from home you're feeling until you watch the shadows cross the ceiling. Well, I don't know, but I can see it snowing. In your car, the windows are wide open. Come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have to be alone. Come on home. Valentines break hearts and minds at random. That old Easter egg ain't got a leg to stand on. Well, I can see that you can't win for trying. And New Year's Eve is bound to leave you trying. Come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have to be alone. Just come on home. The moon and stars hang out in bars just talking. I still love that picture of us walking. And just like that old house we thought was haunted, the summer's end came faster than we wanted. Come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have to be alone. Just come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have to be alone.
Thanks for that song. It's one of those moments where the song and the invitation I was really sitting with, and invitation to family to come home, and man, thanks. So was this doing this the whole time, Al? Where I wanted to start with talking about returning and Hosea was to tell you that I hate the book of Hosea. I'm like not totally kidding. What happened was I was looking at this preaching schedule, and I texted all the rest of the guys, and I was like, "Who put me on Hosea?" Spoiler alert, I did. And I did that intentionally because I know about my feelings that I have about Hosea. Now, some of you might be like, this is interesting and weird that Sarah hates the book of Hosea and is preaching on it. Some of you might think it's weird that I'm a pastor and hate the book of Hosea. Some of you might be feeling quite relieved that I hate the book of Hosea, and you're feeling like, finally, someone is on my team. We're going to talk about all of that, okay? So I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of context, the book of Hosea. And in the meantime, I'm going to steal your stand because I'm not as short as this stand thinks. I appreciate its movability. Thank you kindly. All right. Okay, so a little bit about Hosea. Hosea is actually the first book in the sequence of the 12, which are known as the minor prophets. Hosea, I think, is written, it's rooted in the words of the prophet who is preaching in the northern kingdom. Now, just again, a little bit more context for what's going on at this point in Israel. It's a divided kingdom, and there's a lot of wrestling with what are the people, who are they called to be. They're dealing with these huge empires that have been growing around them, including the Assyrians, etc., who are looking quite cunningly at the land and saying, we would really like to take over this land. And they know that has happened. Maybe my Bible's too heavy. Oh, that's bad Bible. Just kidding. Sarah hates Hosea, and now she thinks her Bible's too heavy. Okay. That's never happened before to me. I don't know if this is one like, anyway. Okay, so basically there's 14 chapters in this book. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why when I say I hate the book of Hosea, why. Okay. The book of Hosea is, you can divide it into really kind of three main parts. The first part starts off where the book of Hosea, Hosea brings the oracle in the form of an analogy. And that analogy is carried through in the first few chapters of the book, and then it's returned to at the end. So it's chapters 1 to 3. Then chapters 4 to 11 are this like prophetic lawsuit, which you'd expect from basically kind of end of the other prophets being like, you've gone the wrong way, come back. Okay, we don't want to, but you should come back. And so like that happens in basically 4 through 11. And then 12 to 14 returns to this image, and it's an image in which Hosea is the stand-in for Yahweh God as the prophet, and then Israel, the corollary character in this analogy, is Gomer, who is Hosea's wife. Okay. But not only that, dependent upon the history of interpretation and translation, within this, Gomer is set up as, and often translated as, that she is a prostitute. Or another way, if you look at the Hebrew, would be basically a woman who has many lovers and essentially is decidedly unfaithful in her marriage. Lots of extramarital relationships, Not shockingly, throughout the history of interpretation of this text, it gets really sensationalized. You know, the terrible harlot, the evil wife who is off to like get all the men, sorts of things. And part of my struggle with this text is that I know the legacy of interpretation and of usage of it, where it's been utilized to really set up, well, we all know men are more like Yahweh God, the poor, scorned, yes. And women are all bad prostitutes, which, you know, is one of my favorite ways of thinking about marriage. And then additionally, what happens throughout this text and the history of interpretation, and just a content warning about it, is that there's domestic violence in it. Like, and that text, this book has been utilized in the history of the church to justify domestic violence and violence against women. Well, if she just submitted to me, all-knowing God that I am, you know, then I wouldn't have to beat her, okay? So that is part of when I say I hate this text. It's because I know about that history. I'm aware of how it's been employed, and I frankly just don't usually want to deal with it, right? I'm all into the, like, in case you haven't picked this up yet, I'm kind of into the God is love vein of scripture. Like, Jesus is for everybody, and like, you should be healed and whole, and yay. And then you come to Hosea, and it's like, oh no, I don't want it. Let's not talk about that one, right? Which is not unlike the recent famous song, right? We don't talk about Bruno. No, no, no. And that's actually what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, was Bruno. And what do we do with texts like this, where there's some really fraught stuff in the text itself, problematic stuff? As modern readers, probably most of us would read this and be like, what is going on with the Hosea book? Let's go to Matthew, please, right? This text, what do we do with it? How do we tend to it? And there's 3 different ways that also correlate with, I think, how most of us deal with conflict and problems in our families and our lives in general, right? One of them is the Bruno methodology, which is we don't talk about it. We'll just pretend it's not there. What problem? There's no problem. There's no Hosea. We all know God is loving and good, and like equality in relationships, go Team Christians. We do it better than everybody. Okay, that's one option. Another option of a way to deal with it that happens in families and in our lives is, well, what's wrong with you that you have a problem with it? I mean, come on, it's just like a little book. I mean, oh, really sensitive about that, aren't you? We don't talk about that thing, or if you do, you're the problem, right? So, sorry, that felt really aggressive. I'm sorry, Haley. I don't mean it. That is not my preferred option for dealing with things, right? So one is to just pretend it's not there. A second is actually to kind of trench in and get more aggressive in our defense. And another option is to set it on the shelf for a time period, or maybe on account of your own history, you're like, I acknowledge that there's complexity here. This is a little too tender for me right now, so I'm gonna let someone else take care of that. That's another option. Totally respect that. And then another option is in community or with some support from others to figure out, how do I tend to this? How do I hold this? Right? Like, I'm not going to suggest for any of you, say that you come from a family with a family history of violence. I'm not going to be like, hey, go figure that out on your own. Good luck, right? I really hope that you have a good therapist, community, etc., who can help you tend to this. And this is where I think thinking about how we approach texts impacts how we approach our lives, and vice versa, right? You know, you can do I'm only going to tend to parts of my own history that are nice. And then you can do the Elizabeth Cady Stanton option, which I kind of like, where she just cut out all the sexist parts of the Bible. But conversely, what happened is, if you know of the slave Bible,
There's people who cut out all the liberative parts of the Bible because they didn't want slaves to know that maybe God cared about freedom and liberation. Literally got rid of the book of Exodus, right? Because the slaves got free and we don't want anybody to know about that, right? Kind of thing. And so I want to suggest some possibilities and some ways of dealing with texts like this, parakeety sorts of things. And some ways, anyway, that I find helpful. You might have different ways that you want to deal with this, and that's fine too. One of the things that I like to do, though, is to think about how the Bible was written in a particular context to a particular people, right? Like, it wasn't written yesterday, right? They weren't like, "Dear John Seberg, here's a letter I'm sending to you," right? Like, that's not what they, sorry, you're never gonna sit in the front again. I just saw you, right? That's not what's going on here. So, like, let's not miss the fact that this actually was a patriarchal culture, right? Like, it was one in which, as you're talking to people, they understood, like, how family systems and how lineages flowed. Like, it wouldn't exactly get the award for, like, enlightened equality families, 101. And so being able to do that puts a little bit of historical distance to say, instead of just like, "Here, thus saith the Lord," it's like, oh, these are people trying to understand themselves and God in a particular time, right? They're working within a metaphor and an analogy. And sometimes maybe you've done this too. You had a metaphor or analogy that sort of worked. It wasn't too great to start with. And then people picked up on it and they made it really, really bad as it continued forward. Like, that's basically Hosea. Like, it wasn't great to start with, and then, people peopled and decided to take a history of interpretation and make it, like, ensconce things that are pretty awful, right? So being able to say, hey, this is a particular people writing in a particular time, in a particular context, and I don't have to agree with that context. You don't have to. You can say, oh, there's kind of some concerns with this, right? That's what I do anyway. A second thing with it is then I try to approach the text and say, okay, if I can be honest that there is violence in this text, I don't think it's okay. What's some of what what is underneath it? What's the substance of what they're trying to communicate? What's at the heart here, okay? So Hosea is trying, through metaphor, to tell the story about a personal, close, covenantal relationship in which one member is very much like, I'm going to sell myself for other things. I'm going to go after other things because I don't feel confident in this relationship. I'm not comfortable. Like, okay, so if I take that step back, I can start to get a little more curious about the text. You might still be like, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying, for me, I can get more curious. And go to the text and start asking questions about it to say, okay, so what are the themes that are coming up here? How can I translate this? Now, one of the people who's been really helpful for me with this is a theologian named Sally McFague. Sally McFague wrote a book called Models of God. And she talks about how, particularly in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament, it's folks who live in a really different world from ours. They're in a world where there's vassals and kings and, the only thing we have is the crown. And, that's not really a good plug for kingdoms or anything like that, right? And so being able to identify that God is working within these people's norms, just like God shows up and works within our norms too. And that doesn't mean all the cultural norms are right. And so we can go to the Bible and think of new analogies. Okay, so what's an analogy here? I mean, one of these might be an older film. Some of you have seen Wolf of Wall Street. Okay, I'm going to turn that gender thing on its head right now, folks. Okay, so Wolf of Wall Street involves basically this norm around, the guy who's like going to make all the money and be a terrible person. Okay, that might be a modern way to think about the book of Hosea, right? Leonardo DiCaprio's character has lost sight of his own humanity in the pursuit of money. Well, that's part of what's going on in Hosea, is it's naming, hey, folks, the story underneath the story here is that as a people, for whatever reasons, you don't believe that you're worthy of love. You've forgotten who you're meant to be in the world. And you've gone the wrong way. Literally that song would be a much better retelling of Hosea. Come on home. Come on home. You don't have to do this. And so underneath it, for me, that's part of how I deal with texts and why I assigned myself to talk about Hosea, actually. Is because I want to be a person, as much as there's safe space where I feel like I can do this, to be able to turn towards the parts of our own family histories, to our collective histories, to our faith, that are alarming, problematic, concerning. And through turning towards those, it allows us to actually open up to new ways of being. Okay. Case in point with this. I don't get over being white by pretending I'm not white. Okay. If I don't tend to the racial history that my own skin is part of, right? Then I have a few different options of how I show up in the world. The morally superior white person who's better than all of you white people who aren't as good as me, right? Because I'm repressing all my own stuff. Or someone brings up the fact that I just engaged in a way that perpetuated racism, was racist. I get defensive, right? We're not going to talk about that, those sorts of things. But healing doesn't come that way. And so by turning towards texts like this, bringing our questions, bringing our anger, our concern, our alarm, our why are we talking about this book, whatever it may be, can become a way of helping us to change and to impact how we show up in the rest of our lives. And when I do this work with Hosea and say, okay, Hosea, we're having it out, I feel good about this wrestling, and I'm feeling pretty good right now, it does help me then to sit with those sorts of questions that the book of Hosea raises. Where are places where I sabotage love because I don't believe I'm worthy of it? What are ways that I've forgotten that I'm called to live at home and invite others to be at home too? What are ways I keep running after things that I think will give me life, meanwhile ignoring the things that will feed my soul? Then I can let Hosea invite me, as Sarah today in this world, to figure out what does it mean to be a covenant person in a different way. So as it turns out, not shockingly, I don't so much hate Hosea as I hate what's been done with it. I hate the harm it's caused. And I want, kind of like you said, I want then my interpretation and my way of dealing with this text to be a story that I can tell that's actually good news. So with these themes of thinking about turning and returning, and maybe even telling different stories, I wanted to invite you to, for our Breathe Out, to do something that we do intentionally in this service, which is we pick songs that resonate with a theme that some of you listen to in your daily lives. And I want you to think about what are some songs or a poem, or maybe it's a show or something that deals with this theme of turning and returning or having lost your way. So I just want you to take like a minute, kind of bounce some ideas off of each other to think about, okay? So take a minute to do that. I'll invite the band to come up, and then I'm going to solicit your feedback about this, okay? Take a minute. Okay, I'm going to start soliciting some feedback. Just yell, do this and then yell it out. Any songs, poems, shows that you think help to tell the story of turning and returning, a la Hosea in better translation? Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to go first then. No, anybody come up with Turn Around, Bright Eye? Turn around, every now and then I fall apart, and I need, isn't that a good prayer? I need you more than ever. God, if you'd only be holding me tight. Come on, other ones? Any of you? Any songs? Here comes the sun. The sun, yeah, here comes the sun. Turn, turn, turn. There we go. Turn, turn, turn. Country road, take me home. Oh, that's good, to a place where I belong. Get home, says Hosea. Right? Minnesota, I don't know that song. Okay, Minnesota. It's like the songs I make. Okay, so part of why I just wanted to do this is part of what we're hoping for in this space is that Sunday morning isn't just about Sunday morning. But it's about thinking about in the rhythms of our lives as we go along. What does it mean for me to live as a person who's committed to turning, who's committed to returning? When I read the news, when I hear about things in the world, can I hear God's echo say, turn, return, turn, return? And so that suddenly I'm singing a 80s pop power ballad and being like, all right, Yahweh, here we go. That's a little bit of the hope. And it's rooted and comes from me from a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Letters and Papers from Prison. What I am driving at is that God should not be smuggled in somewhere in the very last secret place that is left. Instead, one must recognize that the world and humankind have come of age. One must not find fault with people in their worldliness, but rather confront them with God where they are the strongest. God's already here. We're trying to be grown-ups. Let's be people of faith then who seek to live that turning in all of our lives. Let's sing our last song.
Dark wells comes pure clean water, and the ice will melt as the day gets hotter. The night grows old as the sun climbs into the sky. When now is then and tomorrow's coming, where you've been starts meaning something. As long as you can, just keep stumbling ahead. As long as you're not finished, you can start all over again. As long as you're not finished, you can start all over again. You can start all over. You can start all over again. As long as you're not finished, you can start all over again. You can start all over again. From deep dark wells grows old as the sun climbs into the sky. As long as you're not finished, you can start all over again. As long as you're not finished, you can start all over again. You can start all over again.
Well, thank you. And thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being in church together. Just a couple last things before we go. The one is that today is the close of the Ask for the Stewardship campaign. And so would invite you either in the back of the room, online, there's a link, or in the common, you can find a place where you can drop off what you've decided that you want to do for this next year. And I know that the next announcement is technically yours, but I just want to say a plug. If any of you can stay for the town hall, it would be really great having your voices present. And if you do stay, like sit with folks you don't know, because I think having you present, being able to hear your voices around what's meaningful for you in this space, it would be really helpful. So will you tell us the details about the town hall?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes like this. When I say town, you say hall. Town. Hall. Town. Hall. Yeah. It will be in here at 11 o'clock. So we're going to wrap this up quick. If you feel like you need to run to Jerry's or Jimmy John's or something to not be hangry, we have bagels. So grab a bite to eat and come back in here at 11. There is childcare also available. So please stay. We want to hear your voices. We want you to be a part of this. A few other announcements. The Monday PM Women's Study will start tomorrow, 6:30, and that is in the Hearth Room. And the study will be on the book, Kate Bowler's book, Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I Believed. Sounds very intriguing. So you can sign up for that. There's a QR code available in the bulletin, or you can go to the website, meetinghouse.church/women. And then this Wednesday, there's another Family and Faith that is 6 to 7:30 in Gathering Room 1. And Jeff Lindsay, if you've ever heard of him, a very special outside guest, will be here talking about navigating and surviving through the sandwich generation, which if you don't know what the sandwich generation is, it's simply those who are sandwiched between caring for aging parents and young children at the same time. And of course, I'm reading this verbatim. These are just a few of the many ways to get connected and things going on around here. You can always stay connected through our e-news, take a look at the website, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. We're so glad you joined us today. Thank you for being here. Look for the blue parakeets. You can do it.